The water jugs, bitch, go crazy. Like, when he said that, I was immediately in the interview like, well, how much are in the water jugs? Like, because I'm just like, I would not, like, my arm strength.
Bitch, what I was trying to say is this situation got me so wet and so dry at the same time. Exactly.
What's up, bitches? Welcome back to another episode of So Wet, So Dry. I'm one of your hosts, Fiji, like the island, like the water. I'm such a fucking brat, and I work in social media and marketing.
And I'm your other host, Autumn, like the season. I'm a big nerd when it comes to Pixar movies, and I work in entertainment. If you guys are tuning into So Wet, So Dry for the first time, what we do is we explore duality through deep diving topics about sex, relationships, personal identity, all where internet trends and reality collide. We post polls for every single episode and give an opportunity to submit a story or a question. So make sure you're following us on Instagram at So Wet So Dry. The O's are zeros. And wherever you're listening right now, it would mean so much to us if you could just subscribe or follow, depending on the platform. If you're on Spotify or iTunes, please give us a rating. And YouTube, definitely subscribe, comment, let your girls know what you thought.
Yes, and today we are talking about doming. We interviewed our new friend David, who is a trained dom. He talked to us about all of his experiences. So we're exploring what it's like to be a dom, the gender dynamics, why do people become a dom, what it's like for the sub. We're breaking all of that down. But before we get into that, we're going to start the episode as we always do, talking about what we're so wet and so dry about in this very moment. I will go first. So I'm so wet because I went out last night, like, spur of the moment, you feel me? Like, I felt like I needed to just, like, get out, like, go, like, be free, like, live my life, even though it is Memorial Day weekend, and, like, I was planning on going out Sunday and Monday, but I'm like, I couldn't wait, you know? And I'm just wet about, like, that energy when you're out and you, like, know that you look good and you're just, like, being friendly and kind of, like, flirty with, like, a bunch of people. But, like, it's not like I ever want it to, like, end in anything. It's just, like, I love that part of my personality where I could literally flirt with, like, a door. You know? Like, I'm just, like, in love with myself and, like, meeting people and, like, I just like to flutter, you know?
Dude, I know. And I feel like that was, like, definitely, like, born for us a little bit in college, too. Like, I love that energy, and honestly, yes. I miss it. So I'm living through you, okay? When I saw you post on Instagram, I thought those were old videos. I was like, there's no way she's going out. It looked like she was about to go to sleep. Like, I'm like, what? Like,
I know,
you were
I was
so tired.
Yeah.
So crazy. I'm so wet because if you guys are loyal listeners, a very long time ago, I talked about how when I'm stressed out and need to make a to-do list of, like, tasks and things that need to get done, I make a major stressor list.
Mm-hmm.
And now I make a list that's called Operation Get My Life Together. And for sure, it's for sure, it's OGMLT. Like, that's what I put
she's trying to patent the lingo as she's remembering.
That's what I put on my notebook. And, like, it literally just feels so good. And then I'm like, wait, like, it's not even that bad. And, like,
yeah.
I do it in categories. I do, like, work, podcast, life,
yeah,
and then miscellaneous, because there's always, like, some other stuff. But it just feels so good to get it all down and categorize it. Like, I really do love a good organized document.
You're such a Taurus. Like, you love to keep it together, organized, like, check it off. I aspire.
Yeah. And I just, like, I have unused notebooks, like, dying to be opened and just ripped through. So it's just, it feels great.
Yeah. Amazing.
OGMLT, guys.
OGMLT, patent. Okay. I'm so dry, again, on the topic of going out. One, because I'm hungover as fuck right now, guys. It's giving, like, clammy, shaky, bubble in my throat, might throw up. Like, not the best feeling.
Yeah.
But also, I'm dry about, like, you know when you're out and it's, like, the bar or the club is, like, ending and everyone's trying to figure out what to do next. And it's, like, we know where we're going, but, like, people are just lingering in a parking lot.
Yeah.
And, like, if there's anything about me, like, anyone who goes out with me knows this, like, I get so fucking impatient. And I'm just like, what? Like, I don't get the like lingering and the like we could be at someone's house right now. Like, we could be at the next spot. Like, we could be in the car on the way. Why are we just like meandering? And it takes so long for people to get it together. And I just, no hate, no shade. I feel like it's a Southern thing, but like, I just don't really fuck with that vibe.
I like a good linger. Like, I don't know.
I mean, it's weird because like during like the time that we're at the bar, I love to be outside and like lingering, smoking cigarettes, talking to people. But it's like the second it's like we're in the middle of moves, I'm like, no, we need to know where we're going next, because I don't know. I'm just like, I don't like this like unclear shit. Like, let's have a plan and go. So
I feel you. I feel you. This week I'm so dry. Like, I don't know, especially with this episode, like, it's definitely going to make us horny. Like, it's like a really sexual episode, like dom sub, like whatever. So I guess like I'm just dry that like I wish I wanted that more right now. Like, I feel so like comfortable in being single, but I do wish that I had a little bit more drive to like get to know people. Like, I don't really know where this pessimism really came from, bro, but it's not really that fun anymore. And I know this episode is just going to make me, like, want to fuck someone so bad. Like, I mean, you have someone. After that interview with David, I'm like, fuck, I need to, like, get out there. But I know, and that someone you're talking about voted in the polls, and, like, it was one of them for later, and I'll tell you about it, but I was like excited the way that he voted. Okay.
Yes.
But let's get into the episode. As Fiji said, this episode really is based around our interview with our new friend David that we met. So we're definitely going to be talking about him a lot and centering his experiences, just because he is actually living it. Like, we can do research, you know, but we wanted to really just go straight to the source, you know? Yes. And it was just a connection we made, and we just made it happen. So we're going to be talking all about doming, you know, why people really get into it in the first place. Like, why would someone want to be a dom versus like a sub or whatever, the different types of doming. And obviously we have to bring gender into it. So we are going to talk about gender dynamics as well. But let's get started with just defining doms. Like, I'm sure most of us know what it is, but just to get a clear-cut definition, a dominant takes the lead in a dom-sub relationship, assuming their submissive's care, support, and guidance. A dom refers to a male dominant, and dom, D-O-M-M-E, refers to a female. Dominance is not tied to any gender, sexual orientation, or socioeconomic status. Instead, it is believed to be a complex psychological drive entwined with personality. So what's the role of a dominant in a BDSM dynamic? One of the dominant's responsibilities is clearly defining the roles between themselves and their submissive. Clear communication and expectations, rules, and consequences can provide the submissive with a sense of structure and order. While the boundaries and parameters of your dynamic are unique to you and your sub, a dom/dom generally plays the role of leader, guide, caretaker, and protector. And now let's talk a little bit about some characteristics that doms may have. So, well, first of all, dominance is often misunderstood. Media portrayals can make it look like little more than abusively ordering someone to cater to your whims while offering nothing in return. However, the power exchange of dom-sub dynamics can be healthy and fulfilling for both partners. And if it's done correctly, it will be fulfilling and healthy for both partners. A submissive willingly gives power and control over themselves to their dom/dom, who meets their needs and leaves them wanting to continue submitting. So some dominant personality characteristics include: you likely have excellent self-control and live a disciplined life. You're not afraid to lead by example or take charge if a situation needs leadership. You understand and utilize the power of body language and nonverbal communication. You may be decisive and know what you want. Patient but relentless may describe you well. You enjoy responsibility and ensuring that things in your care thrive. You're likely protective of your partners and enjoy meeting their needs, and you enjoy being in charge and respected. So there's people that like to be dominant and then people that like to be submissive, a switch in the bedroom. But like what we're talking about is people that take this dom to like kind of a whole nother level. Like this is very real, and like people's identity whether it's a dom sub or whatever it is. So I never really thought about it. It's like, oh, their psychological and like personality traits could have a lot to do with it. So when I read this part, I was like, oh, that's interesting. But the other stuff we're going to get into really supports that, later on. So it really can be like about just sort of your personality. And it doesn't have to be like, obviously we all know how someone is in the bedroom doesn't equate to how they are in real life. But for people that take on the dom identity, they go through BDSM training, they're fully immersed in this world. Like maybe it's a little different,
Yes. So we asked you guys, have you ever been a dom before in your sex life? And 62% said yes, 24% said no, and 14% said no, but I want to. And then we asked the opposite, have you been dom before? And 68% said yes, 21% said no, and 11% said no, but I want to be. And I think this is really interesting, kind of like tied to what you said before, like how it's like an actual like identity and like a practice and people are trained on it, versus I think a lot of people just think of like, oh, who's the quote unquote like top, or who's the like more dominant or submissive one in their like sex, So I wonder how that breaks down. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, it's fine. Like, I don't know if any of our listeners are, like, trained doms or trained subs or whatever, but I've never been a dom in my sex life before, like, literally not once. I've always been the sub, like, literally not once. I think I've tried, like, with past girlfriends, like, they were like, please, like, just try your best, whatever, and I'm like, and I'm, like, failing at it. So I've never done it before.
Yeah, I have definitely, like, I have one guy that I, like, he pays me to be his dom, like, just through text, like, video, Snapchat, that type of stuff. He calls me goddess or master. Those are, like, what he's chosen.
Goddess is it.
I like goddess more than master, just because for me, master feels a little gendered, like not as like femme, but like that's what he likes and like he's paying me for it. So I've honestly like learned a lot about doming like through him, because like he told me exactly what he likes and exactly what he wants. So I'm really just like playing this role for him. Like it's not as much like, it doesn't really sexually turn me on as much, but I do like enjoy it. Like it is like a nice like, I don't know, we're going to get into like the reasons later or whatever, but like it does feel like a like confidence boost, like power, like it's different than other sex that I've had in the past, like where I can be more submissive, and also like I'm getting paid for it. So that's like a whole different thing. But I would say like, I don't know, like in terms of being like actually like dom in my sex life, I don't know if it's like as much like what we're talking about. Like I've played more dominant like roles in different like sex acts and stuff. Like I would say I'm like a pretty much averse, but I would lean more sub like most. It depends on the partner. It depends on the partner, but yeah.
But let me ask you this, like with the guy you have this relationship with where you're his goddess, like whatever, like if he was obviously still paying you, but like did something you were like, I don't want to do that, like would you just be like no? Like is the stuff you're doing, it's like it's not turning you on, but it's still not crossing a boundary?
Yeah, no, it's definitely not, especially because like honestly like it's really all about him and like what he wants, and obviously like I'm like rewarding him, or I'm like what is the word, like when he misbehaves or whatever, like when he hasn't paid me on time, then I've been very clear, like we're not doing this. Yeah, because there's like good punishments that are a treat, and then there's like punishments it's like, no, you need to fucking pay me. So like there's been that too. Yeah. But yeah, I do think like boundaries are like important. But I think at the same time, like with that situation, like we both have steered it, because like he's saying what he wants and I'm saying like when I'm available or when I'm not, or how much this costs. Yeah. So like, yeah.
Wait, say treat again.
Treat?
Okay, perfect. And then someone submitted a listener story. They said, I've been dommed because it means I can be kind of lazy and still be considered freaky. LMAO. All you have to do is lay there and get slapped and you're good. And I do want to say someone that submitted this story is a new Instagram follower of us. I think she found us on YouTube. So shout out. Thank you so much for supporting and submitting. But I'm like, this is like, it's interesting to me because I think like the dom versus the sub, it's like you both have kind of hard things to do. Like the dom has to like have that like emotional intelligence and like ability to be able to degrade someone, whether it's physically or emotionally. And although the sub is like laying down and might be lazy in the sense where like they don't need to think about the next move, like they're not in control. But you still, like, it depending on the sex, like, being a sub is definitely not easy. Like, you have to take shit. Like,
well, yeah. And, like, I think we're going to get into it with David more, too. Like, there's a difference between, like, an obedient sub or, like, a bratty sub. Like, I feel like being a very obedient sub is, like, a little easier. And, like, you know, because I love to be fucked from the back where I just have to lay there and not really do anything. But I am. Like, I'm talking dirty or I'm, like, pushing back. Like, you know, it's not like I'm always, but it's not as much, like, work, really.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think there's different types because if you're, like, a really obedient sub, then you're not really, like, pushing back as much at all versus, like, if you're a bratty sub, like, then you're kind of, there's, like, a teasy, like, back and forth.
And it depends on the type of sex. Like, I've had sex where, like, I was just, like, laying back, like, rubbing my clit or whatever, like, doing it to myself. And then someone was, like, dirty talking me. So in that situation, it's, like, that is pretty lazy. Like, I'm literally just laying there doing it.
That made me think of that time that you were doing that with that guy and you were telling him what to do. Like, I feel like you've had dom
When the fuck?
When you were in Atlanta.
I was telling him what to do?
You were like, just stay right there. And you
yeah!
Like, that's kind of
I was
dom
like, record
energy.
me, bitch.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I hated him. Like, I don't know why we were in that situation. Like, we were just not, like, we were reminiscing of old times when we used to be crazy. Somehow ended up at this place. And I was just like, you know what? Like, I really want to have sex. I hate that it's you, but, like, I'm fine with it, buddy. Like, oh, my God. Yeah, so that's, that was, like, a whole different situation. But I was going to say, like, if it's a different type of dom sub, like, sex where you're, like, having to, like, do like physical labor, like all this stuff. It's like you're not being lazy. So it depends on the type of sex. But overall, I feel her.
Yes.
Because before I was doing like more intense stuff, like I definitely did feel like I was being like lazy, quote unquote. Because I'm like, it's the biggest part for me is I don't want to think about the next position. I don't want to think about what we're going to do next. I need you to just take me. Because I'm down to take pain and like take the degradation, but I don't want to think. Right.
Well, and that's the thing. I think you can be lazy in the sense of like you're not thinking about what you're going to do next, but sometimes the dom just sits back and tells the sub
and
what
it's
to
like,
do.
Go.
So the sub
go
is
in the
doing
corner.
More.
Remember when that guy made me, he asked me to take this guy. And I was into it. I'm not like, oh my God. Like I was definitely obviously down. I did it. And he was like, take a video of you standing in the corner. And I looked like kind of weird for sure, but like I was in a t-shirt, like just like
in the corner.
Yeah, and like he didn't see my face, like, but whatever. That guy from Atlanta, like we had some crazy FaceTime phone sex too. Like honestly, no, he scares me. Okay, so as we mentioned, we interviewed David Teitelbaum, who is a trained dom and the founder of Rose and Good Faith clothing brand and Laurel bathhouse.
Yeah, so I actually reached out to Rose in Good Faith because I had bought their shoes. And this is like a shameless plug, guys, because, you know, not sponsored or anything like that. I genuinely like their shoes, but they're sustainable. They're made of recycled sex toys, like dildos and stuff like that didn't make it to like market because like the batteries didn't work. Something didn't work with them. So instead of taking up space in landfills, they make these shoes and they're honestly like so comfortable. They're like an alternative to Crocs. So I thought it was dope and I just reached out to them and he was like, oh, I'd love to come on the show. So like shout out to him for doing that because that's like, it was just a super cool way to connect. But yeah, David's awesome. And so are the shoes.
Yeah, he is. And we're so grateful that he let us like interview him about his experience because we don't know any trained doms in our life. Like we were, you know, not completely ignorant, but a little bit. So I feel like I really learned a lot from him and also just the research for the rest of this episode. So let's watch this first clip of David talking about how he got into doming and kind of his early experiences.
Where do we start? Okay, so when I used to live in New York and used to fight, when I went to an art school called the New School. very kind of like soft, artsy school. I was one of the only straight dudes there. I
Yeah.
also grew up in a community around dance. So my family big in the dance world in New York. So there was always like a lot of confusing gender roles and kind of like softness. So in my push against the softness, I started fighting Muay Thai pretty intensely in the basement of a church. So really getting that kind of like hostile, aggressive, overly masculine energy out. And it was new for me. So I think I was like walking around Central Park and ran into an old friend from high school. And this is when I was in my early 20s. And we started fooling around. She came back to my place and she like beat the shit out of me. Like punching and on top of me. It was amazing and I loved every part of it, but it showed me my walls to pushing back and fighting back. Like how sensitive I was around female being a partner. There's so much like disconnect and not very close. And it was like this energy I wanted to grasp, but was so far behind. So like she was punching me and I would like be so scared to punch her in the stomach.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tap into that energy. So that was, that was like a strong alarm of like, I need to work on something. I need to
Mm.
really hone in this energy. And I started doing it as a hobby in New York for a long time, about 2 years. And it was just kind of like through conversation, finding friends, being very deliberate and asking, just being like, hey, can I be a Dom? Can I be a
Yeah.
Dom? You be my sub. Didn't always go well, but most of the time went pretty well. A lot of like denial or like very soft or like pushing, but not hard enough.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that he came from like a Muay Thai, like physical fighting kind of like background, because I know that there's like a lot of like precision and like mental clarity and just like body control that comes from that. Like I did like some kickboxing, like not professionally, I'm not very good at it, but like I've learned that there. And I think it was really interesting how he like noticed like this thing like in his own mind where he was like really afraid to like punch her back, and that he wanted to like explore that more. Like it's so funny how like these things come up in our lives where we're just like, oh my god, like this says something more about like the person I am, and this is like a way that I want to like explore this in my sex life. And you know.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into it more about like the limits and like the psychology that is behind, this Dom sub BDSM world. And I know, I think his journey is really interesting too. And it was kind of like, yeah, I mean, I would be afraid to punch her in the stomach, well, like especially as a man, like.
Yeah.
But it's good that for the most part, people in the BDSM space are like, we are performing right now. Like, this is
Yeah.
not real life. It's all about communication and boundaries. So it's like kind of trying to, like, he talks about just unlocking that or getting past that barrier of
Yeah.
like not wanting to get there. So yeah, it's super
And
interesting. And go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say, I also like that he like tied it to like his masculinity and stuff too, like saying that he went to like an art school and he was surrounded by like women and like queer people and like wasn't as tapped into like that part of himself and his masculine energy. And I think it's like such a healthy way to like explore that and like become more comfortable in your masculinity and like all of that. But obviously like Doms can be women as well, which we're gonna hear from in this TikTok, right?
Yes.
Now, I can tell you how I started, but a lot of people come to it differently. How I started was that somebody suggested it as a joke many, many years ago. And it was because of how assertive I was in my communication style, not because of anything sexual. And even though I was quite directive, but everything was very vanilla. And I kept that at the back of my mind. And when I was very frustrated in my corporate career, I looked it up and I found a place that was looking for trainees. And I called them up, joined them, and started pretty much the next week. I managed to shadow a lot of the other mistresses that were working there who were kind enough to let me in. And the headmistress Amanda, also set up some workshops for us on rope and little tricks. But a lot of the things that I learned was definitely from observation and from listening to what other people had to say. So I would say that if you don't have access to a facility that is looking for people to train, for looking for new people, and they don't have a system that supports onboarding people. There's a lot of classes that are available. There are lots of communities of people who are available and who have reputations. You want to be careful about who you approach and be wary about whether you can trust their information. Take time, look for reputations, and understand what it is that maybe you're looking for and how you can find that in people who are more aligned with you.
It's funny that you said it started just kind of as a joke, but it's like people kind of put it almost on her, like, because you have this personality, like, I think you would really thrive in this space.
Yeah.
And it looks like, she obviously did. And I think the TikTok was really resourceful as well, because everyone's always like, what do I do? Like, how can I get into training? How do I get invited into these spaces? But it's like, there are communities that will welcome you for sure. Like, especially if you live in like a big city, and there's a bunch of websites that I actually pulled as well, and we can link them in the episode description if you guys are like interested in learning more. But I think it's good to cover perspectives of being a dom of all different types of genders. Like, obviously David's a man, so like he speaks to the male experience of being a dom. But there's, non-binary people, women that have it as well. And it's like, it's different in a way, because unfortunately, like, patriarchy gender is like alive and present, but it's also like, because we're in this safe space of like performing, like, gender kind of leaves for some people, like, depending on what their dynamic is and what exactly they're doing, which I think is really cool too. Yeah.
I like how she said this stuff about, like, in her corporate job, like, they told her that she would be, like, good at it or whatever, because she was very, like, direct or, like, clear to the point. But I think that's so important. And I know David kind of echoes similar stuff like that later on. But, like, having such solid boundaries and being able to, like, communicate effectively. Like, if you're someone who's really good at that stuff, like, in your job, in your daily, like, family life, whatever, like, you would probably, like, it would be easier for you because you're starting from that, like, basis. But yeah, I like that she also said, be careful, because there are obviously, like, sketchy places out there, like, cult-like, whatever. So, like, definitely do your research and, like, find someone trustworthy. If you know anyone in the space that you trust, like, follow them first, kind of thing.
Yeah, and, like, talk to people, like, referrals also, like, try to connect with maybe, like, a person that is, like, legit, and, like, ask them. Like, I feel like, especially in the BDSM space, where it's definitely not tiny, but it's not huge either. So it makes sense why people are always kind of looking for those things and looking for answers. So I feel like they would be down to, like, help you. Yeah. But let's get into a little bit more about why people like doming, and also, like, reasons they might want to do it. So we'll start with you guys. We asked y'all, if you are into doming in your sex life, why do you like it? 33.33% was all of the answers. No one said it's healing for me, so that was at 0%, but 33.33% said, I like the power and confidence. I like to be a safe person for my sub, and it really just turns me on. So I feel like it really just turns me on, like, to that. It kind of tells me, and maybe I'm wrong, but it's not like your whole identity of being a dom and you're not practicing it all the time, because I feel like to be a serious dom and go through all this training and take it seriously, it has to be more than just that. You have to get more, like, emotional stuff out of it, like more personality and, like, power out of it. It's not just about, like, you getting off anymore. Like, this is like a whole world where you're able to be free and just escape from life and, like, maybe be someone else and just kind of let go. So but yeah, I mean, I don't like doming, so I don't really like, I wouldn't have answered in this poll, and I didn't.
Yeah, I think it was, like, the power confidence thing for me, because similar to, like, what and kind of like what David said, I feel like it's almost healing for him in a way too, because he realized that there was, like, this kind of gap that he had in, like, being able to, like, take control or be in a dominant position or, like, be, like, physically aggressive, and he wanted to heal that part of himself, like, with his masculinity. But I feel like for me, being a sub is more healing for me. versus being a dom, because I feel like I am someone who's very like in control and like dominant in my regular life, like taking care of other people or the relationships I've been in, like those types of things. So like to be submissive feels like I don't know, like counter to that, and it feels healing and like a relief. So I was surprised. Like I feel like people don't always think of doming as something that's healing. Like they'll think of it more for being a sub, but it can be. Yeah.
Right. And I feel like, honest to fucking God, Fiji, like I don't, and maybe you'll like disagree, but overall, like I don't think I'm dominant in real life. Like I think I am rather submissive. Like even though I work so hard, like in my 9 to 5, like I am very much like, work past hours? Yes. Like, whatever you want? Yes. Like, I am also submissive. Like, people have definitely taken advantage of me before. And, like, I feel like it would be healing for me to channel my dominant energy, not become a trained dom, not do it for the rest of my life, but just dabble in it a little bit to, like, allow myself to be, like, you are hot, like, when you're being powerful. Like, it's not just when you're, like,
you get like Dad. Yes, yeah. No, because I do think you have dominant energy in certain situations. Like
where,
you can be like,
babe?
Like you're like number one, like more protective, I think, than like I am. Like if someone's like being like, I can turn into a bitch, but it takes me a longer time to get there. But I feel like if someone's threatening like you or someone you love, like you're very likely to like stand up to them. Like you can be very dominant, like. And especially with people you don't know as much.
That's
and like
Taurus
when you're
shit, 'cause
out.
I'm loyal, bitch.
Yeah,
right.
Like I feel like you do know how to set like good boundaries and stuff. I think it's more when you get into like intimate relationships and work and stuff that you become a little more submissive.
Like, yeah.
But like when you first meet people, I think you could be pretty dominant.
Right, like when I like go make the first move and stuff.
Yeah.
That's very true. That's very true. Yeah, so I think it can be healing to tap into either side. Like if that aligns, like not for everyone. But more on kind of why people like it and why they would get into it. We pulled this excerpt from an article on kinky events. This is from the UK, so we can still put it in the description. I know we have some UK listeners, but this is one of those sites where you can like find events and stuff.
Ooh.
But it says the best dominants already exhibit dominant behavior in their everyday life. It's simply a part of their personality to want to have their own way. Lead from the front, retain control, and do things on their terms. For someone like that, it just doesn't feel right when you're in a relationship with someone who wants to boss you around. It kills the sexual attraction because the polarity of the power dynamic is inverse. Being a dominant in a dom-sub relationship feels good and natural to these types and amps up the sexual attraction. Not only do they get to exude their natural confident personality, but they are able to share it with a submissive type who loves the displays of dominance and has a natural desire to serve and please. The two personality types bind together as strongly as the opposite poles of magnets, bitch.
Damn.
Being a dominant is not about aggression, manipulation, or abuse. I mean, I just like... I mean, they really romanticize it in that paragraph, but it's just interesting. Like, all these articles I was reading, it's like, it's really about personality. Like, if you're going to be a good dom, it's like, it's in you, like, already, which is just, like, the complete opposite that I feel like we always preach because we're always like, you're different than you are in the bedroom.
But I do feel like it is, because like when we're reading this, I'm like, okay, that is 100%. Like I think you need to be with a dominant person. Like knowing everything that I know about you with like sex, yeah, you love to serve and please. Like that gets you off. But I feel like for me, it's really both. Like, I love to be in control, and I like when people, like, do shit my way, like, definitely. But in sex, like, all the time. But in sex, not always. Like you know, it's, like, it's both.
I know,
for me. But I do feel like I have that inherent part in me, but I'm also not uncomfortable being in the passenger seat either.
Yeah, because... You know what's interesting, like, because I didn't do any research on this, but it's always, like, dom-sub. But, like, I'm sure there's a bunch of, like, trained doms and subs that, like, verse and, like, switch off.
Yeah.
And, like, I feel like it's kind of like you're a bisexual, like, in BDSM.
Like, yeah, well, because I've heard, like, I think it might have been on Horrible Decisions. I heard an episode with one of the doms, and they asked if she doms, like, in her regular life, like, her regular recreational sex life. And she was like, no, like, this is just, like, my work. So I feel like people can be like that too. Like they can channel it in a different, because, you know, recreational sex, like work sex can be very different. Also, like sex with a hookup versus sex with someone you're in love with. Like it's different types of sex, you know? So I
So
could
true.
see people like going back and forth.
Right. Okay, so this is our one and only like Reddit section, but we did go to Reddit. This is the BDSM community Reddit, and someone posted asking reason for being a dom, like, and then they kind of went on, but I just included some responses. So this first person said, the trust that is put in me and knowing that I can hold space for my sub to be her most vulnerable and authentic expression of herself. Along
Beautiful.
the same lines, someone else said, I enjoy the power exchange, control, respect, obedience, and devotion, which is freely and enthusiastically given by my sub. So both those things like are very much screaming healthy to me. Like that sounds great. Like it's the fact that it's a really big part of people wanting to be a dom is like a kind of about the sub and like wanting that to be reciprocated. Because also with the other article, it's like, you're a dominant person, say you want to be a dom. It's like you're already like kind of have that dominant personality, and then you find someone that like that's their favorite thing about you, or like that's why you guys work. Like I can see like it's a powerful relationship, especially if it is healthy and like intimate. And so yeah, I love that.
Yeah, especially the first one is like so beautiful to me, like being the most vulnerable and authentic like expression of herself.
Because
like,
it's so true.
It's so true, because you can really like let loose and like explore these like parts of yourself that you can't in your regular like daily life or whatever. Like
when you're subbing, like you definitely look hot, but sometimes you don't. Like especially if you're getting like slapped and shit. Like
I mean,
like,
think about
like you look kind of distraught.
Like
so
after I have
vulnerable.
sex, even when it's not like some crazy BDSM shit, it's like your eyelashes are fucked up, your hair was in a bun, but now it's
my eyes
crazy.
are watering
like,
from gagging.
Yes,
like, I look a mess.
You're like, spit all over you, like all that stuff. But it's like,
and I'm
they're
loving
accepting you. Like you
Yeah.
can cry, even like the aftercare stuff. But
Yeah.
Okay, this next one says, as a dom, first and foremost, it's a natural tendency. It's comfortable for me to be dominant over a submissive girl. It may sound odd, but it makes me feel safe and happy and fulfilled to have a submissive to care for and take over. It can be difficult to bring up my dominant tendencies in a new relationship, but it seems that I have gotten lucky in attracting naturally submissive women, so it hasn't ever been an issue. The absolute greatest joy for me is to create a loving, safe, and fulfilling space for my submissive to thrive in.
Like none of this is like, I'm a man, I'm on top, bitch, do what I say. And like, I do feel like that's very stereotyped. Like, but you guys have to remember that like BDSM spaces are not like real life. It really is kind of like you're stepping into this alter universe, similar to the strip club, like similar to like those kind of underground, almost taboo, but like also healthy. Well, BDSM spaces are 10 times healthier than the strip club. I don't really want to equate those, but you know what I mean? It's like it feels different than normal society. So I don't know. It's just it's
you're
really great.
Rethinking it, like you kind of have to rethink like what society tells you in the ways that we think about sex or like relationship dynamics in order to like even practice this, because society can be so like weird about it.
Exactly.
But I love that like this is a space where it's like when you think of like all the men's rights activists and whatever that are like, oh, I need a submissive woman and I'm dominant, like
cook me dinner, bitch.
Right, like they have it confused in the sense of they're like disrespecting women and not like what these guys are saying and like holding a space for their submissive to thrive in. Like, you know?
Learn, take notes, men, for real. Okay, this last response we'll read, it's kind of a long one. It says, I'm 45 and I've been a dom for almost 28 years.
Woo.
For me, the reason I love it is a very personal reason. And I need to stress, I cannot stress this enough, that most dom subs come from perfectly healthy families, and this is not the reason that anyone else may or may not become part of the kink community. We come from all walks of life, all cultures, and all social environments. Okay, guys, and a trigger warning before this next sentence related to SA and children. Continuing on, I was severely abused as a child. So for me, being a dom is a way for me to have the control, but use it in the right way. It makes me happy to know that my sub completely trusts me and feels safe with me, that I would never do anything to break that trust or actually hurt them. And when I say actually hurt them, I mean hurt them to a point they did not agree to, or even just give them a little spanking without consent at all. For me, it's the perfect way to take the power back that I just did not have from when I was 8 years old to 17 against a grown man, but in a way that's healthy and respectful and loving. It's almost like therapy. And even though I haven't thought of my stepfather in years, and I always knew from the very first beating and essay that I did nothing wrong and this man was a pervert and psycho, I'm still into the kink community. Because come on, vanilla is just boring. And I know for a fact that I would have made my way here even if I had a great childhood. And we just wanted to include this because it is great representation. And like this person said, like this is not the main reason people get into this space, but it could be a reason because all different walks of life are there. And it's reminiscent of our CNC episode where we shared another Reddit story about a woman that was abused and used the kink CNC as a way to get some control back. So, and this person's been doing it for 28 years. So obviously, they're okay and they really took this experience and it helped them heal and get their control back and also just cultivate this beautiful relationship like all these other ones are talking about. So, and just emphasis on, consent and the part about actually hurting them is huge because if someone's consenting to be beat, yeah, it's going to hurt. Like pain is pain, but actually hurting them is when you cross that boundary or you breach their limit when the limit has been made clear.
Yeah. Honestly, that story like kind of gave me chills and like I really liked the end.
As well.
Yeah, it was like really deep and the way that they worded it, I feel like was so inclusive of like other people's experiences. And I like at the end how they said like, and I know for a fact I would have made my way here even if I had a great childhood, because I also think there's a misconception where people are afraid to speak on this because so many people who are not part of the community or don't like have this type of sex think like, oh, there must be something like fucked up about you. Like, oh, there's something wrong with you. So there's that stigma around it. But I love that they said, like I would be into this regardless, but it does like inform part of it. And if anything, like, they're using these experiences to like work through them as a form of therapy. Like that's like really beautiful,
Right. And it's just like, it's, the same thing of thinking that sex workers have had to go through trauma, or it's like, oh, this girl, she definitely has daddy issues. Like it's that whole stigma. And I think that, yeah, it's just really powerful that this person like just put their story out there in that way. Like it was really poetic, honestly. But yeah, I think it's just important for us all to just keep an open mind and just remember that there's never like people do things for all different sorts of reasons.
Yeah.
And just not to like judge people too, like BDSM is intense for sure. And I get if you're someone that does like more sensual sex and likes to just have sex with people that you're in love with, like I get how it can be like a little scary and off-putting, but it's like just recognize for them that it's actually the opposite and it's healing and it's something that just allowed them to like be their true selves. Like it's
and
really
find
inspiring.
Pleasure too. Like sex is all about, like pleasure and just having fun. Like it's a space to like let loose and like enjoy yourself too. So
right.
Yeah.
So now we're going to transition into Dom training. And specifically, we look to David because we're like, what goes on during Dom training? So this is what he had to say.
And I've had two trainers. And how it would work is I would go into a set and I'd be with a sub, either a new sub or someone that I've been with more consistently. And anytime a question came up, I would ask them how they would handle it. So I would get tons of feedback about where I could push. What does this mean? What does that mean? How to communicate. So they taught me through activity and action. And I still have it to this day on my Hinge profile, which is Dom looking for a sub.
Nice.
So I know that you can understand rules, respond with, "Hi, sir." Yeah.
So the coach, were they there during your like Dom sub activities, or was it like an after session where you talked about it? Like how did that work?
We talked about it every Friday. I had a few sessions throughout the week.
Mm-hmm.
My fiance was one, and then I stopped being a foo,
Yeah.
and we got engaged, and now I'm really stepping back into the space. But she was one of my subs, and she's the most amazing human being in the world.
Mhm.
But we would talk every Friday, and I would review and have questions and comments, and there's a lot of um, unknowns when dealing with different people that don't know how to communicate, and also me having to refine the skill to be able to figure out how does someone communicate well in that environment, in that space. Most of the time they were first encounters.
Mm.
um, some of the big questions that would come up is when a sub would ask to go harder,
Mm.
to know what that limit really means,
Yeah.
because it could be vague. It can mean a lot of things.
It's interesting that like he said a lot of times in the training it was like other people's first encounters too. Like I feel like that would make me feel really good like going into
Yeah.
it knowing it was other people's first time too. And it makes sense that he learned like the value of communication in this space like right away and like the limits of hardness because everyone's limits are so different and like how do you sort of figure that out like, IRL like you have to because part of me is like, well, there has to be times where things goes wrong. Like, how do you really convey like your pain levels? Like,
Yeah.
communicate that. Like, it kind of has to be done like through practice. So I guess it's like you definitely like start a little bit slower and kind of like ramp it up depending. But it's super interesting.
Yeah, I think it's so funny that he said every Friday too, because I have therapy every Friday. So it's literally like training, like therapy, like you're going to class. Like he
Right.
said he would like clock questions that he would think of or like things to clarify and like bring them up when he met with them on like Fridays and stuff. And like, it just shows that he was like really taking it seriously and really putting time into this,
Yeah, it's like you have your trainers and then you kind of do these sessions like with other people that are also being trained. So it's like going in, he's training to be a dom and he's going to be paired with someone that's training to be a sub. Like it honestly sounds so exciting, but and I wish we asked him to like does compatibility play a factor or is it just
Yeah.
like whoever's training that day, that's who you're going to be like doming?
Yeah, that is like interesting because I wonder like it could get awkward if like the compatibility isn't there. I
Or
mean,
what
I
if
feel like
you're
it'd
like
be
so
like,
not down?
yeah, like it's gonna be awkward a little bit regardless your first time doing stuff. If you're like a little nervous or whatever, you have to like build up that confidence. But yeah, if you're not really like as attracted to this person, like how does that go? Like, I
Right.
don't know. Interesting.
So now we're kind of going to echo what we heard in the Reddit stories and how this experience of doming and training has been particularly healing for David.
So my experience has been, it is immensely healing. The amount of times that a partner has cried towards the end of a set is like 1 out of 4. I think there's a lot of trauma that comes with um, someone releasing and being submissive and giving up and getting into the headspace. I think there's a lot of sexual healing that comes from getting out of your head, being told what to do. Tends to, a lot of lack of trust seem to be the through line from other sexual experiences. Because as a woman, I don't know this, but like as a woman, there's people and like men who are the fucking worst weaponized sex when you were young. And I don't know anyone who hasn't had like a traumatic sexual experience when they were young. Like men are the fucking worst.
Yeah.
So being able to be in a safe situation where it usually happens with someone getting slapped in the face, after they've come and you slap in the face, tend to like turn into tears and emotional release.
This was like another part in the interview, like the Reddit story that kind of gave me chills in a way too, because when he said 1 in 4, it's like that's so many. And like that's such an intimate moment for them to cry and everything. And like also when he said like after they come, like slapping them and then like them crying, like I can see how that would be such a like release.
Yeah.
Like, because even, like, more recently when I've been, like, masturbating, I think of, like, some of those, like, degradation, like, types of things, like, And it does feel like, especially having gone through like domestic abuse and like stuff like that, it's like you have this like fixation on it, but like you want to reclaim it in a way. So it's like, it's not that you want like pain or to be like abused or told what to do or whatever, but like you almost want to rewrite that, like similar to CNC, in a way that feels consensual and healthy and like is giving you pleasure versus like giving you like pain and like emotional hurting. So
yeah. And that like rewiring process has proven to be healing for so many people, like no matter what they've gone through. And I've definitely been someone, there was a period in my life where I consistently cried after sex, and like I was scared to have sex with a person. I didn't really know like why I was crying necessarily, but it was sort of like a release. And like part of me is like, I wish I could have like done that in the BDSM space. And I know I still can, but I haven't really like, I don't cry too much after sex anymore, like when, I guess. But it was always when it was like really good, like where I orgasmed. Like it was that, and it was like so unexpected because it is kind of hard for me to get in the zone to orgasm. Yeah. Especially when I was younger. I mean, oh my God. Like I was just chaotic. But so when that happened, I'm kind of envious. Like I want to like kind of experience that, and not envious, but I wish that for my younger self, that instead of like with those like whoever people I was with, like it was something more, just like healthier and better. But the part about where he said sexual healing and like getting out of your head, it's like that's what it is. Yeah. Like a lot of trauma, like we talk about, lives in the body. So it's like sometimes doing not necessarily this, but like anything with your body like can help to really release it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's also like that, like crying after an orgasm. Like I've done that before, even when it wasn't like any sort of like BDSM, like degradation, like anything even really intense, or like because the sex was like, I'm in love with this person, but more just because it was like, it felt so good. And like, it's such a, like, you know, when you do Molly or like acid or whatever, and you're just like, this is so like amazing. Like you never experienced that high. Like orgasms like have the ability to do that. Like it's like that rush through your body where you feel like incredible. So it's like, I do think sex, like regardless, can be very like spiritual. And especially when you're going against like what like society commonly pushes on us that sex should be. I think it makes sense a lot of people like come to this as they're older, because we don't get the best sex education that says like, oh, BDSM can be healing.
Like,
you know,
what
like
sex education do we get?
Right.
Though? Like nothing. I know. And the part about where he was like, men are the fucking worst. Like, you know, I have to say something about that. Like I did fuck with that for sure. But it's just, you know, the part where he said, like, men, like, what did he say? Like, they weaponize sex. Like, we have
And every woman has, he said, like, most women, like, throughout their life when they were younger, like, has experienced that. And that is, like, it's nice. I know Autumn, after the interview, was, like, so surprised or, like, so, like, proud that he, like, said that stuff. And I'm like, it is more common. Because I assume the worst, always. Of men, you definitely always, But, like, I feel like it makes sense, having been like a trained dom and having these like intimate, like connecting experiences with women. Like you have to understand them on a different level. Yeah. But I do think, go ahead.
No, you.
I was just going to say, I do think like most women, unfortunately, have like sexual trauma. Like he said, you know, it is so common.
Right. And the direct effect of that is like having this lack of trust in sexual experience. And I think for him, like, it would be impossible for him to be a trained dom and like a successful dom, like if he wasn't in tune with like trauma, because I feel like as not everyone that's in this space has experienced trauma, it's like not everyone in every space has, like, we as a society, a lot of people have trauma. So any space that you're in, that's going to be true, unfortunately. Right. So it's not any different in the BDSM space. And because you're doing these more like intense, like deeper style sex, it's like you have to be in tune with that. Otherwise, it's not going to be a successful session or relationship at all. So I think a big part of becoming a dom is like, honestly, you have to really tune into that and like the gender dynamics of it all, and like be emotionally open and empathetic to other people. And like, I think that's really special and beautiful, personally.
Yeah. And I think it is like, because I wasn't surprised that he said the thing about like, you know, men can suck or whatever, because I think a lot of men can't
Suck a
at least
dick.
acknowledge that. But like the part that's refreshing to me is like him being like so in tune with their trauma and like really caring, because I think a lot of men just without the dom training or how they think traditional sex roles should go in heterosexual relationships, they think they're supposed to be the dominant one and the woman's supposed to be more submissive, and they like ignore that whole part of like women's sexual trauma, and they like are almost like afraid of going any deeper. They kind of just like get afraid of it and want to ignore it. So like I think it is like heroic masculinity, honestly, for like men to like explore this and learn about it, and it brings you so much closer to your partner too.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, like I didn't include it in this episode because I think it should be a different episode, like really leaning in. But, you know, it's like, why are there more male doms than female doms, like statistically speaking? Because there are. And why, you know, do a lot of women want to be submissive? And like it's like patriarchy, and it's like, I don't know, like I feel like if you say you were like essayed like as a child or whatever, like it makes sense to like get the control back, like you would want to kind of be a sub. Like I feel really uncomfortable talking about this, but do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, because I feel both. Like I feel like it can be complex, because like I feel like the part of me that wants to be dominant also has to do with my like abuse history, so I feel like it can be both. But like just how women are like also like we always have to wear a mask kind of thing in regular society. Like even 50 Shades of Grey, when that was so big, like so many women loved that shit, and I feel like it was like this like turn in culture where we were like, oh my god, like women are into like quote unquote fucked up shit or whatever. But like we do all kind of have that, like we want to be like dominated and like release and like let go of control, because there's so much pressure as a woman to have everything under control. I think like you have to look good, you have to like be nurturing, you have to take care of your families, you have to be a good friend, you have to be a good partner, all of that. So it feels good to just like release and let like someone else completely do the thinking,
right,
you know?
Right. And it's like when you said 50 Shades of Grey, like when I went to see that movie in the movie theater, I was with one of my friends that had been in an abusive relationship, and she like we had to leave, like it was so triggering for her. And so I've never seen that movie.
I've never seen it either,
I was like,
honestly.
That made my friend sad. I'm never watching it. You know?
Yeah, I heard the movie was really bad though. Like I heard that it was
completely.
Not.
Yeah, like I've seen clips, and like I mean, yeah.
The book
I'm just
was
like,
yeah.
Yeah, I remember like people freaked out because like she had leg hair or something. Like there was something like she had hair on her body, and like people were like in an uproar. But anyway, this was one of my favorite probably parts of the interview. David lives by these 4 rules, and these are what he lives by specifically. It's not like, you know, these are the set rules of doming, but for him, and arguably so, like they're great rules, especially the first 3. The last one, like he kind of talks like it's not his rule anymore. But let's play that clip.
I think one of the big rules is like, I have 4 rules every time I engage with a new sub. There are 4 clear rules. One is communication. They have to always communicate. And I say over communicate. I want to know traumas, boundaries, reward systems. I want to know things that are liked, things that are hated. If it's verbal that they want to feel, or to feel physically dominated, it's really getting into the conversation of just pure communication. And the thing that it took me a long time to learn is when someone says the words, I don't know, that's when it's 100% don't engage, because that person doesn't know their own limits. And it's the scariest place to be when someone doesn't know their limits and you push too far. I haven't had it happen, but when I could push too far, it could have some splashback.
Yeah.
Because sometimes someone doesn't want to get punched in the face.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
you know? And sometimes someone does.
And rule number 1 dies when someone says the word, I don't know. And if they can't find an answer, then like set's over. Rule number 2 is respect and decorum. So to speed up, slow down, you have to say more sir, less sir. So it doesn't pull me out of set, because there's a reality that I'm getting into a headspace and a mentality that this, you know, partner is also getting into a different headspace. They're playing a character, which is why it's a set. You're sitting in this space that has no resistance. So if I get to be in my very strong dominant self, and she gets to be in her very submissive self, there's not a lot of resistance. There's a constant reciprocation of the energy that you're safe in that space. Because like all day I'm getting yelled at by fucking musicians. I have to be incredibly submissive. I can't be like, no, fuck you, say sir. So it kind of like it keeps everybody in the right headspace. Number 3 is no penetration on the first time. No matter what, no penetration. And that's to go through an entire set to see if it feels safe and it's comfortable. Number 4 used to be you can't sleep over, but I think like kind of a dick. Because the idea is also about like it starts and it ends.
Yeah.
And it's about getting that experience and then being able to take it and sit with it.
Okay, I love that he said that like the scariest place to be is where someone doesn't know what they want, because then it's like you can't have a good experience if they don't know, because then how are you supposed to like even meet their needs, your needs? What if you risk like hurting them, like those types of things? And I feel like the communication one and the decorum one are very connected, because it's like in order to have the right communication, you need to have the decorum and like be in that space where you're like role playing. But it's just so funny because I feel like for me, like we talk about this on the podcast all the time, like sometimes the communication aspect of like those types of things and other things in relationships I'm not like the best at. Like I want to just avoid them. And part of it sometimes is because I think, especially with like flirting in my sex life, like I like to be like very like fuck it, and like I'm performing, but I don't want to like break down the barrier of like they know I'm performing. Like you know what I'm saying?
I know. And I feel like you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you do like kind of the spontaneity.
Yes.
And you feel like, do you feel like talking about it is like kind of a turn off?
It ruins the allure. Like I feel like especially like how I was saying how I was out last night and I'm like flirting and like whatever, like I think it's like a kink or like a fetish of mine to like be in that energy. So like if I like tell someone like, oh, like, you know, it just like ruins it.
Okay, babe, but what about this? What about this? So, okay, so what if you're on a date, you're at a coffee shop, like this guy, girl, whoever, they have no gender, but you're super into them. Like that you're eating and you talk like about this really hot role play, like, oh, what would it be, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, you don't know what's going to happen. Like, it's just casual, but you guys really break it down, like what you guys both want. And then later they're like, okay, so when I come over, like it starts, like we're going to do it.
See, I feel like
it's spread out.
That's the thing, and honestly, it's something I've worked on in therapy, like with other stuff. So I feel like the training is like really interesting to me, like as a dom and a sub, because I just have a really hard time with like uncomfortable conversations in general. And I feel like it's also the anxiety of like leading up to it versus like if I'm just in the moment and I'm feeling this energy, I'm running with it and I'm going with the flow versus it becomes so much more serious. Even though I know it makes it safer and it avoids problems, like it's preventative. But, like, I think it's a issue that I have with sex that's in other areas of my life as well. Like, it's definitely something I've been working on in therapy. So, like, I get the purpose of it. It's just, like, in my mind, I can't – it takes me out of it to, like, you know, like the fourth wall type. I don't know.
Yeah, the fourth wall. I feel you. No, I know. And that's why, like, I really like if I'm, like, going to start a role play, like, one of us, like, walks out the door and, like, comes in and then it's, like, scene, bitch. Like, because I feel, like, I know, like, I don't know. I guess I'm grateful that, like, I do feel comfortable having those conversations. Like, I think it does come from, like, just, like, growing up, like, two moms, like, gay, like, they were always just, like, talk about your feelings.
Like, use your voice.
And I just kind of, like, my mom literally symbolically got me a microphone for one of my birthdays, was like, I need you to use your voice more. Like, I was always, like, just trained
that's
like
foreshadowing, like, the podcast logo.
Yeah, it was when I, like, graduated this youth group. Like, it wasn't, like, religious. Like, it was just, I mean, it was, like, Unitarian, which is like you kind of believe in everything. But anyways, so it was very, and back then I was like fucking so rude about it. Like I was like, what is this? But now it's like, I think that's a big reason why. And that I don't know is really powerful. Like the look in his eyes, like he was so serious. Like that's the scariest place to be in. And it's like an automatic no. And I just like respect that so much. And just the part about you're performing and you want that constant reciprocation, and that's what you guys are doing, and that goes into like what you want to be called. Like you have to be playing the part,
Yeah.
And I mean, as like an ex-theater kid who like thinks she like peaked in high school because I got one of the lead roles, like that shit, that is what attracts me to it a lot. Like I love that. I want to have a different name, like just like stripping. Like I love the performative piece to it so much, and I just can't even emphasize that enough.
Yeah, I love the performance thing too. I guess it's just like I don't know when I'm performing sometimes and when I'm not. Like, you know? I don't know.
Right now? No. Babe, remember when you took the class at Emerson that was like performance?
Oh, the
class?
like the art. I got naked in that class. Yeah, like yeah,
Bro!
we had to, yeah. That class was cool. It was definitely.
What was it called?
It was like living art or like art in.
Yeah, because you guys were like doing like art performances of like different types of mediums. Like everyone did something different. And for one of yours, I was involved, guys.
Yeah.
You FaceTime me in class, live during the performance. But anyways, like I see that stuff in you as well. And like putting on different personas. And like we love that shit. So I think it's like, you know, just as simple as that could attract this to someone.
Yeah, the decorum part of things, like I like how they're so connected because it's like if you're someone like me maybe that feels like a little weird about like the communication aspect of things, but like when you know that like when I'm referring to my dom as sir or whatever, that is a time to like it's a different type of communication, you know? So it makes it more comfortable for both parties because, like, if you go out of it, then it's like, oh, it's over, you know?
Right.
Like, you have certain language, so I feel like it makes it safer for both people.
Yeah, and, like, when he was saying, like, there's a start and an end, and, like, he likes it to be clear-cut, and I think a lot of people do, too, and it goes into the boundaries thing and, like, all of that, and I think it's hard because even when we were talking about earlier, like you were sharing that like when you watch certain porn, like as a survivor, like you do feel a certain type of way. And like for me, like it's not that, but it's kind of just that general come down of like, damn, like that was really degrading what I just watched. Like I hope that girl's okay. Like I don't know. Like I'm just like watching this video. But that's what I struggle with. Like, I'm like, yes, like I would love to, you know, do a sub training session, like maybe not so seriously, but just to see or like go to a sex party. But like, I do fear that kind of come down. And I don't know if I would want to cuddle with the person after. I don't know if I would just want them to leave and we walk away. But I know that I would want to hug maybe someone. Like, I don't think I'd want to be alone. And that's why it's like, aftercare is so important and like it's a huge part of the BDSM space, obviously, like even before care too. Like I'm sure you have to like be in a certain mindset. Like if something horrible is going on in your day, like I don't know if you'd be able to channel that fully and maybe your boundaries would shift kind of depending on how you feel or like real life happens. Like I don't know. So it's that's the part where I'm kind of like, that's what I'm so excited to go and do it and be present. But after the session ended, I'm like, that is when I think kind of holds me back. I'm like, I don't know how I would feel. Like sometimes healing trauma is like actually really painful in the process.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like, oh, like immediately I'm better, but it's like after time of like gaining that control and experience, you start to heal. But I think it's like, it can be honestly a little excruciating, especially depending what you've been through. And, yeah.
Yeah. And I think like you said, like knowing, I feel like what would help is like knowing the root of like why you have that come down at the end. Cause I feel like for me, like it would be tied to the communication aspect of things. Like if I'm not feeling confident enough to like communicate that this is a boundary or that this is a yes or that this is a no or like whatever, then after I'm going to be beating myself up about it and that's why I'm going to be like coming down. Or it could be like the shame aspect of things, like, you know, like I was brought up super like religious like background, like all of that stuff. So like it could be like, oh, this is dirty, this is bad. But like whatever it is, like, or like a trigger like PTSD, but like I feel like doing that inner work, kind of like how David talked about and like in his training where it's like you're kind of like getting to like the core of it, like, oh, it was about his masculinity, oh, it was about this. And then I feel like you know what to ask for from your partner, but you also know what you need to do for yourself.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And the part about like, you know, maybe not being confident to share your boundaries, it's like, then you shouldn't be there. It's like you need to be so secure, and obviously it's not going to be perfect. It's a new experience, you know, but going into that, it's like there's a lot to think about it. And that's why I think like really like emphasis on the before care too.
Yeah. The last rule that like we haven't really talked about though is the no penetration thing. And this is so refreshing to me. Again, like I know it's like there's good guys out there, there's guys that understand women and trauma and like all of that stuff, but like I feel like for so many like cis heterosexual men, like penetration is like the goal, the end all, be all, everything of sex.
Whether it's your
so
mouth,
it's like
anything.
right, like anything. So it's like to have like someone say like no, like definitely that's not a thing for like the first time, and like you know like
So
to be
hot.
conscious of that is very hot. Like it's very like okay, like it gives me hope and
Yeah,
men
and like
doms in
honestly for
general.
me, like I would want to do a session with no penetration just in general. Like there's so many other ways I like to get off, and like the humiliation piece and like the verbal degradation. Like I'm like that sounds fun, honestly. Like I want to be penetrated too, but like to have some times where it's not just that, and it's like other forms of stuff. Like I'm beyond motherfucking.
No, I love when there's like a big ass buildup before penetration, because honestly I feel like normally like I want penetration though, like like I feel like I want it at some point, unless it's like just head, like whatever. Like I feel like to me like sex does feel like complete with penetration, but like so I don't know if I could be like cool with a whole session without, like I don't know, maybe like a finger at least or like something.
Yeah, no, they don't even have to touch me, bro. Like
yeah, you love to do it to yourself too.
Yeah,
so.
and just like be like laughed at and shit. Like I'd be done like immediately. Just like don't make eye contact. Like ignore me like I'm not even there. Boom, I'm ready.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's transition a little bit more into what David had to say about the misconceptions about doming, and then we'll talk about the gender dynamics piece as well. So let's watch this first clip.
I think there's a spectrum. I've met a fair amount of other male doms who are coming from a place of not power dynamics, but control and anger, and they come from a much darker place of hostility. And that seems to be, I think, the biggest fear from women on the outside. And I think men that are in that space tend to be hiding very, thinly veiled their hostility and anger towards women. I'm definitely much more of a sensitive dom with compersion, where if you're having a good time, I'm having a good time, and I just try to get into your head to figure out like what are the things that are going to amplify a situation. This
is like huge to me, and I think it also goes back to like my trauma like with men and like being in an abusive relationship or whatever, because like I really don't like the and I've gotten uncomfortable in situations where a man had good intentions being dominant in those senses, but like if there's ever a gap in my understanding about their hostility, or if it's really hostility, then maybe that's where the communication comes in, because I think it's huge. Like he said, it's very like prevalent and it's very thinly veiled. So like even talking about like some of these situations with a man being a dom, sometimes it makes me like a little bit uncomfortable, because I'm almost like, there's that communication, there's that training that goes into it, but it's so hard to know. So I think that's what turns like people off to it.
Yeah. I know. And I'm like, I feel like maybe it's because like I've never been abused before. Like, but I'm like, because like the porn I watch, like those men definitely hate women, And it's like, do I like get off on that too? Like I question that sometimes, because it's like the most like horrible thing. And it's like, that's what like gets you off.
But do you think they really hate women, or it's their
Bitch,
porn and
I
their
don't
acting?
who knows? Like I assume the worst.
Because I feel you, like I definitely have masturbated to like porn like that for sure, where it's like men like degrading the fuck out of women. Like I can definitely get off on that, but I feel like more when it's like with a partner or a person, where like sometimes like where's the lines of like the sex, you know, like, and that's why I think he said the decorum is so important, because then, you know, like, he seems like he's a really, like he said, I'm a sensitive person. Like, I'm very, like, in tune with that. Like, I know how, like, men can be and the trauma that women have.
Yeah.
But, like, I think, I don't want to say it's rare because I'm not in the dom, like, subspace enough to really know. But I think, you know, it's just so important. But I don't think the majority of men are really, like, practicing that. And they probably are watching that type of porn and get it confused.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think it's, like, really amazing that he's able to be sensitive and intuitive and empathetic to women's experiences, and at the same time, like, go into a place where he is dominating them and doing, like, emotional, physical pain stuff, but those two things can simultaneously exist.
Yes.
And the reason he's doing what he's doing is because he knows his submissive is wanting that, and that's what they agreed to. So it's almost like, it's like doms get off because they are in a position of power and they're, you know, reclaiming masculinity and all these things, but also they get off because they're providing something that they're submissive. They know that's what they want. And that they're both able to thrive in this environment of, like, both getting what they want. Someone that wants to serve and please, and someone that wants someone to serve them. Like, it's a perfect match. But yeah, and then just echoing what you said, like, as him being a man, like, it's really awesome that he's acknowledging that, like, men's hostility towards women, and being like, yeah, unfortunately there are people in the dom space that are actually like that, and maybe those people aren't doing it for the right reasons. But I think it's just, you know, important for you guys, if you are interested in getting into this space, is just to really, like, get to know the person you're going to practice with, or whatever you need to do to be safe, because I think it sucks that a lot of people are turned off to it because of that. You know, it's unfortunate.
Yeah. And I think, like, I want to say, like, a big part of it does come from, like, porn, kind of. Because, like, when you're, it's so different versus when you're in this training space and you're having conversations about it and you're, like, debriefing and you're talking with your partner, all of that, versus if you just, like, are getting off to some porn that's, like, really degrading towards women or whatever. Like, it can be a little confusing because it's like, okay, you know that they're acting. But sometimes I think men forget that, like, you know, women are acting in this porn and stuff like that too. So it's more likely that you're going to probably come across a man that's, like, thinly veiling his, like, hostility towards women than someone like David.
Right.
You know, so I think it is really important to, like, choose your partners, like, wisely, definitely.
And, like, maybe the girl getting, like, being submissive in the video is actually a dom in her real life, you know? Like,
Right.
they don't understand that. So we found this article from Vice. And basically the people talking, there's a Quebec professional dominatrix, Contessa Allura. And then there's also a sadist dom that goes by Faction. Okay? So Allura says there's some interesting gender politics at play, in that he thinks many women are just looking to let go of their regular life. I feel like if you take away these roles, at the very core, we have desires that are primal, says Allura. It doesn't matter who enjoys what. There are these sort of baseline things people like based on society or things they've been through as children. All these other things. I feel like women are looking for simple pleasure, and it's the same pleasure that men would get being dominated by a woman. It's letting go, having someone else lead them and give them the intensity that takes them away from their everyday world and brings them into a fantasy. No matter your chromosomes, that letting go is key. Even if what you're letting go is the stress of taking the kids to soccer practice. What Fraction is uniquely able to create is an environment where letting go feels safe. So really just talking about, like, no matter the gender, like, this space is a fantasy. It's about people wanting to let go and have a healthy escape from their everyday lives, you know?
Yeah, I feel like that's so huge. Like, people always talk about sex, drugs, and alcohol, but, like,
Yeah.
those are all the things that you, like, let go in. Like, you forget your regular life and you just, like, go and have fun. And sex is, like, the most pure, I feel like, because, you know, drugs and alcohol, like, I guess sex could potentially ruin your life too, but like,
Right.
I love that about sex. Like, I love sex for, you know, feeling good, letting go of like the regular stresses, and like, you should want to give that to your partner as much as you experience it. Even masturbating, like, I masturbate all the time when I'm stressed the fuck out, because it's like, you need to like feel yourself.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
And it's a space that, like, no matter the gender, like, everyone really is, like, looking for pleasure, looking to prioritize their own pleasure, and also, like, be receptive to other people's, and, like, you know, be in this space together. More from the article, it says, as for Fraction's theory on what women get out of his services, it's that he believes we are all under serious amounts of pressure on any given day. And it doesn't matter if you're a businesswoman making decisions that affect thousands of people's employment, or a parent who needs to pacify a screaming 3-year-old. We all need a release. I know a lot of businessmen who make a lot of money or are in charge of making financial decisions during the day. They're going to hire a professional dominatrix because for that hour they want to lose control, he says. In general, women, if they're a mother of a child, they're dominant. So again, they want to let go. Even high corporate females, same thing. When I see them at our parties, they're submissive. And I think for a few hours, they just want to let their guard down. And this definitely echoes like what David said as well, like in his professional life, like he's not able to like be dominant, obviously. Like if you are in a job where you have people that are kind of in charge of you and are ahead of you, which most of us, that's the reality that we're in.
Yeah.
Like this is a space people go to get, you know, the sort of opposite of that. And I think it's interesting that it's like he said, you know, in women, if they're a mother of a child, they're dominant. Assuming, like, if you're a mother,
Yeah.
it's like you're dominant because you have to tell your kids what to do. Which I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's something, like, maybe just me, but it was kind of off-putting that he went from, like, businesswoman or businessman to, like, mother of a child. Like, I don't know if I would say, like, mothers are dominant. Like,
I would say yes, though, because, like, I know, like, for me, like, I feel like that a lot with, like, my sex life, and, like, I think of, like, the guy that I'm with now as, like, the peace and the, like, whatever away from everything else, like, especially when we're just in bed. Like, you always joke that I just stop, like, replying, okay, don't text anyone back.
I don't joke.
But it's like,
I tell you that if you're with him, I don't hear for you from 24 fucking hours, bro. I'm like,
yeah,
is she
because,
good?
Because we're usually just in the bed,
She's
fucking,
do not
like,
disturb
watching
all
a
day.
show, like, do not disturb, like, whatever. But it's like, because I do feel like, you know, right now I have someone living with me, but, like, I live alone. Like, with my ex, like, I took care of all of the bills. Like, I moved to a new city by myself. Like, I was a manager at my last position. Like, this position I manage, like, a lot of stuff. And I just feel like it's, like, so much pressure on me constantly, and there's not really anyone around that's, like, relieving any burden. Like, I don't have any family. Like, I don't have any, like, friends nearby that are, like, helping out with even, like, my dog and, like, little stuff like that. So I feel like as a mother too, like, I always think of my mom as, like, the person that had everything together. Like, my dad worked in whatever, but, like, she's the one picking us up from practice. She's doing doctor's appointments, managing, like, little kids at school. Like, that was, like, dominant energy to me because it's like she had so many things in her head.
Yeah.
You know? So, like, I definitely do. I think of, like, moms and, like, those types of women as, like,
yeah,
dominant,
that makes
honestly.
sense. And I definitely think my mom, like, was dominant specifically. I don't know, when things are said about mothers, like, I don't know why the claws come out. Like, I'm just like, well, not all mothers need to be dominant. But, like, I feel like they're dominant in the sense of, like, they're passionate about their kids' safety. Like, they need to be in
And
charge
they're in
of
control.
them. Right.
I
So
think
that
it's like
makes
they're
sense.
in control,
Like,
yeah.
you are, so that makes sense. I'm sorry the claws came out, guys. And then the last piece of this article from Vice we want to read this is a quote from someone who identifies as a sub, and she's talking about her male dom. I'm pretty sure it's Fraction, the sadist dom. But she said, there's a line on his website that I remember when I wasn't sure about meeting up with him that says something like, I take aftercare to a level that a Jewish mother would appreciate, which made me laugh, she says. That's kind of what he has that makes him different. I've been around the Montreal BDSM scene for a while, and you don't meet a lot of men who are interested in being dominant, who are interested in being very tender with someone. So again, like echoing what David said about being a sensitive dom, like this person's saying the same thing. Like, that's kind of a rarity in this space. So I thought it was definitely important to include. And the fact, like, he's on his profile, it's like about aftercare. Like, that does give sensitive dom. That gives like, I'm only going to enjoy this experience if we both enjoy it and we both feel good. And I think, honestly, the only way to have the best enjoyable experience with this dom sub is to be on the same page about all of these things. So I think it's vital.
Yeah, and I feel like especially for women, like, feeling like safe, you know, or any gender really, like, if you're gonna like participate in these things that are like emotionally, physically like painful or whatever, that like you want to know, you want to be in tune, and like she said, it's rare in the Montreal BDSM scene. Like, I know David said aftercare isn't like his favorite thing. Like, he likes to be like alone and stuff like that, like, which everybody's different. Yeah, to like decompress after. But like the just like being in tune with how they're feeling and knowing like the background of their trauma and like all of that, I think is like super huge for just having like a healthy experience.
It really is. But we also found this article that is just, we're going to get into like what exactly, like, not what exactly goes down, but like what types of dom subs are there. So this article said dom sub play can involve much more than genital sex and need not include that kind of sex at all. It can involve service, exhibitionism, the other elements of the BDSM acronym, bondage, discipline, aka spanking or impact play, sadism, and masochism, aka eroticizing intense sensation. It can involve pretty much anything as long as the participants want to do it, and it can be contextualized in a dom sub framework.
So I actually have two things to respond to this. One, like the consensual pain and like the sadism and masochism. I was actually talking to one of my friends when I was out yesterday about how we were going to record this episode.
What didn't you do yesterday?
Right. They were talking about how they like BDSM stuff and like particularly like cutting, because like they used to like cut themselves and like, I should probably say like trigger warning. But they used to cut themselves. So like cutting like during sex like is a form of like pain play that they enjoy, like little cuts or whatever, which I thought was interesting. Me personally, like I did used to cut myself too, but like it's not something I'm particularly into. But on the topic of exhibitionism, because if you guys listen to that episode, it's one of our favorites. Like it's one of our like
long time episodes. Ago. I hate the way I look in it.
Yeah, I don't love the way I look either. Like, it was when we were, like, new to doing, like, more research-based episodes and stuff like that. So it stood out as, like, marking our journey. But anyway, like, both Autumn and I love exhibitionism. It's one of our favorite kinks. And I actually, I forgot to text you about this, but I was listening to the podcast, like, Cocktails, or I think that's what it's called. Sex and, like, Cocktails. I don't know. But they shared this thing that had happened recently on a plane. This couple was like touching each other like under a blanket, and like someone recorded it, and then like it was on American Airlines, like asked American Air, like sent it to the news, and it was like, why didn't you do anything about this, like whatever. And the podcast was essentially saying like, why wouldn't you like alert like the fucking flight attendants, like why are you sending it to the news? And then there was also like the infamous blanket couple at like, I think it was Central Park in New York. They were like under a blanket and looked like they were like fucking or whatever, and people were like, this is terrible, like there's kids around, like da-da-da. And I'm like, am I fucked up? But I'm like, I don't know if I'm just like fucked in the head, because I love like hooking up in public and doing things in public. And like normally when I'm doing it, it's like at night, like out, you know what I'm saying? It's not like in the middle of the day, but still I think that's hot.
Yeah. And
so I don't know. It's just interesting.
I don't think you're fucked up. It's not like you want children to watch it. Like,
right.
Obviously nobody, not obviously.
They're under the blanket.
But yeah, no one wants children
Kids aren't gonna
to
know.
be around, of course. But I do understand what you mean, where it's like, it's not the biggest deal. Like, I guess, like, I don't know. It's like Central Park. Like, it doesn't get any more, like, people than that, kind of. So that's kind of a big one. But I understand what you're saying, where it's not, like, that's so, like, assaulting for you to see, you know?
Yeah.
And under a blanket, like, you couldn't really see anything. Like, I don't know.
But I think it just also goes to show, like, how much of, like, the general population is so, like, iffy about any sex outside of like sex in your bedroom
And
or
to like have a baby, like
yeah, and like making love or like couples, like whatever, like it's just a predominant like culture. So it's like even
Bro,
something like that, like
so
they're under a
true.
blanket, they have a covering. Both of them had a covering in that situation, like
right. And like David said, like sex is like so much in like all of our lives, like all aspects of our lives, and it's like people are just like unwilling to just like get
acknowledge
that
it
and just like calm the fuck down a little bit, you know? Okay, so now we're gonna get into types of dominance, and we pulled this from badgirlsbible.com. There are so many different types of dominance and types of relationships, but we can't be here all day. Like there's literally hundreds, so we just chose 5. So one of them is daddy/mommy dominance, and their practices typically include scolding when subs make a mistake, spanking when they step out of line, reassuring, cuddling your sub and telling them they are a good girl or boy, protecting their submissive's feelings, and praising their partner for listening and obeying. Great if you got a praise cake. Another one are the masters and mistresses of the world, and they provide permission for the sub to masturbate, eat, use the bathroom, touch themselves, or speak, for example. They also administer discipline. So when orders are not followed accurately, they get in trouble. And taking responsibility for the slave's physical, mental, emotional, and financial well-being. Then we have the brat tamer. And here are some aspects of brat taming. Physically restraining and overpowering. If the brat resists, bondage can help. Giving orders, which may be ignored or resisted. Providing punishment when necessary, but without losing their temper. Showing strength in response to bratty behavior. Backing down or appearing weak is not what the brat wants. And remaining patient and respectful, showing the brat that they are not too much to handle and are cared for. So now we got the sadist. And a sadist is the type of dom who loves to cause pain. They delight in coming up with unique ways to cause pain to their partners. This pain can be physical or psychological, as would happen with humiliation and degradation, Autumn's faves. So 2 ideas for a sadist dom would be causing pain, physical and psychological, a lot of times humiliation, and also providing aftercare. So to deal with sub drop and physical injuries caused during play. And then the last one is the leather dom. And they portray masculinity through leather outfits, personal style, and engaging in motorcycle clubs. Also participating in leather events, parades and competitions like Folsom Street Fair, and practicing traditions usually based on military protocol.
Interesting. I know both Autumn and I love the daddy dom. Like I love to call my man daddy. Like I love that whole thing. And I've never heard of it as like the brat tamer. But that's what I love because like as a sub, like I like to like test you a little bit and I want you to still like I want to be like, oh, I have a little control, but like you're gonna like control it. Like,
right.
You know what I'm saying? That dynamic. So that one is like so hot to me.
Yeah, that one stood out to me as well. Like I'm definitely interested in that. Like I like to do the other way too, where it's like you're not being a brat about it and you're just giving into it. But I think being bratty is fun and it's a way to kind of like spice it up for the sub so they are able to kind of like be averse in that situation a little bit, but ultimately they know like they're the sub and eventually they gonna get it, bitch, and I'm ready to get it. So yeah, I just think it's cool. And like the leather dom, like I'd never really heard of, and I feel like you think dominatrix, you think like Catwoman like outfits.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. And you know, the sadist dom too, like that's humiliation. So that's a big one for me as well, like that psychological pain. But there's so many. So if you guys are interested, we have, you know, all of our sources on the screen and everything. So definitely check out that article. But we asked you guys, what's your favorite Dom play? And 44% said controlling orgasms. 22% said slapping and hitting. 22% also said tying up or restraint play. And then 12% said verbal degradation. And that guy that, like, you know, whatever, like, he said controlling orgasms. So I was like, incredible. Because, like, I mean, with the orgasm stuff, like, I really like someone to talk me through it and, like, get me to the point where I'm about to, and then, like, cut me off and, like, not let me do it. And I'm, like, dying. Like, I feel like that's, like, one of my favorite things. Like, slapping, I love. Like, verbal degradation, like, top 3 for sure. The tying up and restraint play, like, I don't know. Like, I like handcuffs. Like, I've never experienced, like, rope bondage. Like, I'm honestly not too sure. Like, I feel like when it comes to restraint play, I would kind of maybe want to do something else than ropes. Like, you know, those things you can, like, go in and, like, your head and, like, your arms like that. But I don't know about ropes specifically.
Because
like,
they hurt.
I'm
like,
kind of just like, I don't know. Just
I
my
like
hands maybe, but.
The, like, burn of it is the part, like, that feeling, like, you know, when you're, like, getting a blister from a shoe or something like that.
Ew,
I don't really like that type of pain. But I definitely love being, like, restrained, like, them holding, like, my arms back or, like, not being able to, like, move. Like, I love that. But, yeah, the controlling orgasms, hot as fuck, slapping, like, all of it to me is very hot. I think it's interesting that the verbal degradation is so low. Like, I'm surprised. Because I feel like I would have thought that one would be,
Like,
but
you
maybe
fucking slut, bitch.
Yeah. I'm
But
surprised that's not bigger. But
I think when it comes to doming, like, the only thing I've maybe been successful at, like, is some of the restraint stuff. Like, I've definitely, like, tried to, like, hold people back and, like, given, like, a good amount of my strength. But, like, that's really
not even with, like, controlling orgasms, though, because I feel like sometimes when I'm, like, sucking dick or whatever, like, I'll, like, go in and then I'll, like, pause and, like, you know, like, make them, like, want it more and then be like, go back, you know.
I feel like I've been too much of a sub with men to do that. Like, with women, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, I definitely, like, talked women, like, through orgasms before, but like, with, no. But it's hot, and it's, like, the tease, like, it makes them want it more. But let's hear going back to our interview with David, let's hear about his favorite Dom activities, some of them that he's done.
I have a few things that I love to do, and most subs have been successful at this. One is squirting and then me standing over and making her clean it up, which is the best. There was once when I got to pee on an amazing sub in the shower. So much fun. And then a move that I love is I'll have 2 water jugs full. So right when I get into set, the first thing I do is just to really, like, test to see if what they said has congruence with how they're acting and responding. So what I usually do is have a sub hold up 2 water jugs and her arms straight. And if they drop below parallel, she gets smacked. So how long can she do that? And if she's really good, she gets to be on her toes to see if she can hold up as long as possible. And then you learn really fast the response to physical pain versus emotional.
The water jugs, bitch, go crazy. Like, when he said that, I was immediately in the interview like, well, how much are in the water jugs? Like, because I'm just like, I would not, like, my arm strength. Yeah. I would not be able to, like, whatever. And I guess that's what you want, because you want to, like, get that punishment. And so I feel like I would maybe on purpose do it just to see, like, what he would have done, or whoever it was, not David specifically, bro. Like, but I just, I mean, the peeing in the shower, I can't really get behind it, but I do like that it's in the shower. Like, I feel like if I was ever going to do that, like, what a great place to do it. You could immediately rinse off and get clean, but I don't see that in my future. It's just not really, I can't, bro. Like, the fluid.
I feel like I could piss on somebody, but like,
the fuck you
for
could.
Money. But the water jug one is interesting to me for, like, a different reason. Like, I immediately went to, like, soccer practice, like track practice, like those types of things, because it's a very physical thing that you're supposed to do. And I do really like like working out and having a coach and being in an environment where they're like telling me to push past my limits. So like the physical aspect of that, like challenging myself physically would be really hot to me, I think.
Yeah.
But also the cleaning up thing, like one thing I love to do, low-key, like after I'm like sucking dick and they come, is like lick it, like if it ends up anywhere else, or even after we're fucking, because usually when I suck dick, like I swallow, but like after we're fucking, like lick it up wherever they came or whatever. I think that's hot.
I get kind of vanilla, because any type of liquids, like it kind of grosses me out, and I swallow too. Mostly because I don't want to see it. Oh, like I don't want to see it. Yes, like I don't like liquids type.
Yeah, I mean the taste is like very like important, I feel like, but usually like most of the long-term partners I have, like I like the taste.
I like the taste. Like I've definitely tasted it where I was like, oh, okay, that that was different.
Like,
but like for the people else. Like my ex-boyfriend, like I liked it, but I still don't want to see it visually. So like the licking shit up, like low-key when it gets to that part in the porno, like I kind of swipe it. Like I don't really care. Like cum does kind of like gross me out. Like I'll be so
like coming on your, if someone came on your face, you wouldn't fuck with that?
No, I like it. Here, okay, thank you. I like it. I want them to come on my face. I want to close my eyes and then get a towel and remove it before I open them after it happens.
Yeah, because after it's
and
like
that it's worked in the past
yeah.
with people. So because I do like to become like on my body, like it doesn't really gross me out. Like I've had it on my ass and my back a lot, but again, like he would always get like a moist towelette and wipe it off of me. So
no, it's so hot when they wipe it off of you too. It's just like you're taking care of me.
Yeah, and I would wipe it off of him sometimes. Ew, the things I do for that man.
I mean, same. That's
I know it's like your partner, whatever, but I'm not gonna wipe it off of like someone I don't know, like dead ass. Like that really grosses me out. But it's like exactly like everyone has their limits, and I know I could still be a bomb sub, like just because I have those like little things or whatever. And I think maybe with more exposure to it, I mean, I still like I haven't been come on that many times by men because I fucked them, but like that's more like intimate, like that's more like boyfriend type shit to be all over your face.
Yeah.
This is like a wild night, I guess. I don't know. So our last section that we're going to talk about are sex parties. So we asked you guys, have you ever gone to a sex party? And 39% said no. And 39% also said no, but I want to. And then the last 22% said yes, they have gone. And Fiji and I have never gone before, but we definitely, like, it's something we're interested in exploring maybe, but also have, like, our reservations about at the same time, you know?
Yeah, like, I don't know, like, because I put no for this, but I have been to, like, a party that turned into a sex party orgy situation. Like, this was back when I lived in Boston. It was, like, an after-hours thing, and it was, like, I want to say maybe, like, 15 to 20 people, and like it was someone's house, and it just turned into everybody like fucking, like every room, like there were different people fucking, and I didn't participate. I think the most I did was I was like giving someone like a lap dance, but I didn't like get naked or whatever. And like at that time, because it was like after a party, I was kind of iffy because I was like just thinking about like STDs and stuff like that. I was like, this is a lot of naked people, body fluids. I don't know. But like actually set up like sex parties, usually
you like get
tested. You have like wristbands or like whatever. Like David told us about some crazy ones that I definitely want to go to. It is nerve-wracking, but
I'm like literally trying to go. Like, and I want to go to like a safe one. Like I want to get tested for everything the fuck else. Everything, and everyone else does too. And you go in and it's like, I just want to watch. I just want to receive and be a sub, or I just want to do this and whatever. It's like so fucking, like we will go to one. And like my first girlfriend, my ex-partner, like they go to them all the time and like post about stuff. I'm like, like literally if I walked into a sex party and like there she was, like I think I would honestly just combust. Like to see her in that environment.
Like in Atlanta, we could see about it because I had seen this one.
But with you, babe, like I love you, but like I
feel like we would probably separate.
We would obviously separate, but I just feel like Like we just know each other so well. Like I feel like I would just like smile, like be like,
yeah,
"Bitch,
like we would be like low key. I feel like I would be like low key embarrassed.
yeah, I'm like, you
my
go on
person-
that side of the room, but like let's talk about
Right.
everything after for sure. Like,
Because there's also Tokyo Valentino, like the sex store. They have like sex stuff there. They have like a dark room. And like one of my friends had gone there and she said she was like mad uncomfortable because you just hear a bunch of people jerking off like in the room, but you can't see anything. Like it's a completely pitch black room. Yeah, a little iffy. But there's definitely like when you come, like there, I could look for stuff and we could like test it out, see. But you're in LA, you got to go to some of David's
because
parties
I would
they
love
seem
to go to like a
crazy.
queer one too. Like, because I feel like if it
Yes.
was a dark room with all lesbians, like that wouldn't weird me out. But like a dark room with men is kind of like,
That is a little, I
and
need
like
to
they're
see you.
grunting. Like, no, dude. Like,
Yeah.
no. But someone submitted a story, one of our listeners, and said, "How does one even get invited to a sex party?" And I feel like you don't always have to get invited. Like I feel like
Yeah.
there are requirements and like things like getting tested and like seeing if you're the right fit for like this specific sex party. But like I don't think you need like to get like an invitation like necessarily. Like I
Yeah.
think if you guys like really do research in your area, like the communities are out there for sure. And again, like what we said in the beginning, like just making sure. And I think honestly finding someone online that maybe is like an influencer and like does this sort of thing. Like I feel like people like that, like I mean, even like David, like he invited us to one, he told us
Yeah.
about stuff. So it's like if you connect with people in the community, I feel like they will welcome you with open arms and like help you out, especially someone that's like influencing this and like making a living out of it. So but yeah, like I feel like anyone can. You just need to be careful about the types. There's obviously so many different types, and then also just like meeting the requirements. Like I'm sure some have like age or like gender.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure some are like, you know, women only or like only for trans people. Like I'm sure there's
Yeah.
a lot of that. And then there's some where it's like fucking anything goes.
Free
Like
for all,
and it's
yeah.
all good, you know?
Because I've seen some on like Eventbrite and like I've seen some
Yeah.
come across on Instagram and like usually like it's always a little iffy because you're like, oh my God, like you see this event, like you don't know anyone going, like it could be nerve wracking to go like by yourself.
By
But especially
yourself?
if you're partnered, I feel like it'd be a really hot thing to do to just
So
go with your
hot.
partner.
And you want to
because you don't
explore
have to
all-
do anything. Like you could just watch the first time.
Facts.
But like you can like look into them because like on Eventbrite, I feel like if you search, like you can find them and then just like look at their website, look at their Instagram, like whatever, do your research.
No,
But yeah.
I definitely want to go. Like, I feel like it would be really good for a couple that is maybe trying to explore ethical non-monogamy too, and like stuff
Yeah.
like that. And like, it's true. Like, you could literally just go and watch, you know, just to assess the scene. Like, there's literally no pressure, and like, you know, hopefully, like, and I'm sure a lot of the time it rings true that no one in there is gonna want to do anything unless you're fully into it. So it's like no one's pressuring you. Like, it's all good. And I think people get so many different things out of these experiences, which makes it really
Yeah.
cool too. Like not everyone is there for the same thing, but we're all able to like be pleasured. So we definitely asked David about his sex party experiences and such. So let's play that clip.
So we go to them at least once a month.
Okay. Awesome.
We went to one last week. We're going to one again on Sunday. It's becoming more and more prevalent. Each party's very different. It is another world that you step into. Your phone's gone. Everyone's dressed in a certain theme. There's a different theme every time. You're in this mansion in the Hollywood Hills or somewhere very nice. There's always a lot of, drug usage, and everyone's very open, and it's just a completely different energy. You're almost in this fairy tale dream-like space where anything and everything goes as long as there's communication.
Yeah.
The most recent party we went to is when we finally had our first hold up, I'm not okay with this. It took us 6 months to start releasing each other. We're very on top of each other. It took us a few months to figure out how to play with other people. And there's something that happens when a dom sub relationship, and then you kind of lose that dominance when 2 or 3 or 4 other men are trying to get in on, this thing that you feel like you're protecting. So I've been talking to a lot of other men who are in the space. I'm like, how do you reframe? How do you take your mind away from that like inherent jealousy and ownership, which is a very old world thing that I think we've all kind of been brought up on, which our women are kind of like owned and made to be held tight and protected. It's been hard. It's been difficult. The the feedback that I've got a few times from some really amazing people are one's a very dad perspective, which is like someone's having sex with her for the first time, like see it through their eyes. It's almost like they get to experience her for the first time, which I think is amazing and beautiful. Um, Another one is like she's just her own person doing what she wants to do for her own pleasure. And we each have our own kinks and she gets to explore and push those boundaries and push those walls and see where they go. Um, as long as we're both on the same page and communicating about what is good and what is bad. Because, you know, inevitably, the deeper you get into that world, the more it becomes easy to slip and to get into a tricky place where someone can feel really hurt. I'm so lucky that she is insanely emotionally intelligent and physically intelligent and incredibly aware. And she knows where the limits are and where they aren't. For me, it's actually oddly enough, she's helping me. How do I pick up girls and like women? Because I'm just kind of like sitting there with like friends hanging out and like talking shit in the corner. Like, look at that. But I would say the best moment was 2 parties ago. There was a security guard watching, and he was watching me with my fiance and another woman, and he kept calling me the champ. He was like the champ. And I was like, this feels good. I like this.
I think the first thing that he said, or like second or whatever, about like him and his partner is like very real. Like we said, like go with a partner, but that's like a journey. It's a learning journey. Like I know like jealousy, even in ethical non-monogamy, is like a super big thing.
Hello.
And it would be awkward, like you said, even us going as friends, like the whole experience is awkward. And then going with your partner, like maybe if you guys haven't watched porn together, I would suggest doing something like that first before you do that. But like, I don't know, like it's a whole different environment to like see them in.
Yeah.
And it's way more than just a threesome. So it's
right.
like,
Yeah, I kind of take it back with us being awkward though, because I feel like we obviously would do our own thing, like as opposed to like what everyone's thought. Like we don't want to fuck each other, so like I feel like I would just like honestly be like, damn, like my bitch is like getting some, like I'm so happy
like,
for her.
It wouldn't
like
be different than the strip club, like you know what I'm saying?
I know, I'm
We've
like, because
been
we did
sexual
shit like
around each other and like hooked up in the same room. I feel like before,
Yeah.
So it's like I don't think it would be like that crazy.
Yeah.
But the part at the end too, where he was talking about how someone was calling him like champ or like something.
I know. The security guard.
Yeah, I had seen this like TikTok of this woman, and she was like, whenever you call a guy like big dog, like they get so hype. And she like tried it with her coworker, and didn't you see that? Did I send it to you?
Probably, yeah.
It was so fun. Like he was like, oh, I'm like big dog. Like he was like so happy, but like that kind of like that praise, that positive reinforcement, it just made me think of that. But like, yeah, it's cool. Like you're having like, you're getting like the validation of like other people. Like you're like turned on by all this different stuff going on. Like it opens your mind. Like,
no, like I really want to go, and like knowing me, I'd like want the security guard working like dead ass.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. And the way he was like Hollywood Hills, like a really nice house. Like I literally live in LA. Like I could go. Like I just feel like I don't know if I'm like ready. Like I'm like, I want to go to a party that like is not like for all first timers, but like welcomes first timers. Like I don't know if that's a thing, but like that would be cool.
There's probably levels to it.
Yeah.
Like you're a beginner.
And I would go alone. Like honestly, out of all things, like I feel like going to that alone, like would be fine, but maybe it is just like because like the past sex worker in me, like I just feel like out of any space I'd way rather go to that alone than like a fucking frat party in college. Like, you know, like it's like, just like
we're comfortable. Yeah, I feel you. Like I feel like part of me would be like intimidated about going alone, but like at the same time I feel like I'd feel more free going alone. And
like once you got there, like
going with you, because like you're my least judgmental friend, or like one that's gonna be turned off by things, or like be like, oh, you shouldn't do that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I feel like you really need to go. It's okay if the other person isn't as like open to things as you are, but like they need to not judge you. Like you shouldn't feel like, oh, when you leave this amazing nice space, you're going to debrief with them later and they're going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. Like it shouldn't be that type of vibe, you know?
Yeah, like how Fiji doesn't like fingers in her ass, but like I do.
I like a thumb pressure.
Bro,
but, like,
the thumb
fingers
pressure is everything
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
I don't like, bro, it's honestly kind of off brand for me, but like I do really like it. Like I can't help it. But we obviously like explained to David what our podcast is. So we asked him like if he had some sort of wet tip for you guys when it comes to doming. So we'll play that clip.
My thing is always negotiation and talking and literally spelling out what can be done and what can't be done. Like I make it a point to sit down and say, can I spit in your mouth? What can I do? What can I not do? And if there's agreement, then it's good. If not, then cannot do it. And constantly checking in. I also learned this very early on is that if I hit with a 4 and I say, what does it feel like? And they say it's a 2, then you can change your scale. But always putting it on a scale because everyone's pain threshold is very, very, very different.
Totally.
That's a lot of quick thinking to do.
It really is. I really like how he broke it down with like if he hits with a 4 and asks how it is and they say it's a 2, it's like, okay, so what I thought was like my 4 is actually there too, so therefore I can go a little bit more to get to their 4. Like I just think that was like it really breaks it down for you, and it's so true. And that's what we were talking about at the beginning. It's like there is some sort of trial runs where like you are going to go a little bit lighter to see their tolerance, because maybe his 4 was a 6 and then he's like, okay, so I need to tone it down a little bit. Like, and that's just the beauty of the dom sub relationship. Like you really feed off of each other and like create this sort of relationship that works for both of you. And like I would say no dom sub relationship is the same. Like they all have those unique intricacies, and it's like special and unique within itself.
Yeah, I thought that part was like the part that stuck out to me the most too, because like obviously like when you're having any type of like regular vanilla sex, like there's some level of like, oh, this feels really good to me versus it might not, or it hurts here, like whatever with penetration and like those types of things. But like when he said this, I was just thinking about the amount of like math or like scaling or quick checking that you're doing like in your head, like is a lot, you know. It's like impulse and you're clocking it, and that's why you're trained and you're getting better at it. But it's like, you know, it just shows like one, the care that he's put into his training and how much he cares about his sub and making them like comfortable. Yeah. And like the best experience. You know? It's
like that tennis match of like feeding off of each other. You know, you can see from him, it's like negotiation is huge, checking in is huge, and like constantly checking in. Like maybe today someone's threshold is a 4, but tomorrow it's a 5. Like we're always changing as humans and like our circumstances and our environment. So it's like it's not just a one and done. Like it's a constant check-in, like probably per session or just, you know, in general. So but we just want to say, like, seriously, thank you so much, David, for giving us the time and just getting to know you and being so vulnerable and open about just your identity and how doming has been for you. So we just really appreciate you. We hope you guys liked this interview that we did. So we are going to play a promo clip, just stuff that David's working on, the companies he has, so you guys can check out what he's up to and where to find him on Instagram and things like that.
Yay, thank you for the opportunity. It's like, this is a long time hobby that I love and appreciate. And it's nice to get into that space outside of my normal 9 to 5 to, you know, exist in it.
That's what we say constantly. Exactly.
Yeah, because sex is fun and should be open. And there's like so much weird trauma and displaced energy around sex. And that's what, I mean, these parties are amazing because it's open and it's mutual and it's consensual, and it's like a pee going into a hole or a finger going into a hole. And like, that's it. Working on 2 projects. One is we make shoes from unused sex toys, which is a fascinating experience to go to the facility where they make sex toys. Just seeing the look in everyone's eyes, it's just like literally dicks everywhere. Everything is very serious. Like we had a meeting there once and it was like come question mark, and it was on a post-it note that was like a very important note that needed to be dealt with. Um, so we make the shoe, and I think that got us very deep in the adult space, which I think is amazing and incredible. And it showed me a lot about the value of not being a shithead in that space. There seems to be like a lot of shitty people in the adult space, that people, there's a need for help. So another just shameless plug, I found a company that creates a scent out of deforested tree particles, so it creates like the wood smell. So we started a body wash company called Laurel Bathhouse. The first scent is called Morning Wood, MOURN, and then we have Cuffed, and Riley Reed is doing one called Nudie, so it's like skin smell. It's going to be at urbanandforward.com next week, and then working on a very interesting project with Shaquille O'Neal and Kinky Rabbit. That's the party that we go to. Working on nanized dick pills, finding a way to do like Viagra, Cialis,
Yeah.
in a nanized. Yeah, to nanize the particle of it, so it's in a Listerine strip. So you just put on your tongue instead of having to like
So
wait
it's
for
like
the chemical.
discreet too. Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah, but a lot of it's around women's health and prescription. It's RX in vending machines. That's going to take some time, but Doc Johnson's behind it, and they're amazing. And just trying to get the Stormy Daniels meal from Dictators up and running. She hasn't got back to my emails yet, but called in a few favors. My Instagram's David_RIGF. And if anyone wants to hire me, hit me up.
All right, so let's wrap up the episode as we always do, talking about what we're wet, dry, and still a little bit confused about the topic. I'm wet, first of all, about just having David on the podcast. It was really cool to hear like firsthand experience and like in a conversation back and forth. Like we always bring in the Reddit stories, listener stories, but being able to talk to him was really cool. I'm also just wet about learning about all the different types of like dom sub relationships and the different like sex acts. It always feels
Right.
crazy when we say that
There's
you do.
so
like,
much.
There's so much. And I love like the brat stuff. Like that is my biggest, like I want to
Yeah.
bring more of that into my sex life. Like I feel like I've done like baby brat, baby dom sub bratty tendency stuff, but like when my man comes over after this, like we're gonna talk about that. So but yeah, how about you?
Bitch, I know, like I'm definitely wet. Like this was like our first interview that we like brought to the podcast, so like definitely monumental for us. And like I love that we were able to, instead of like reading all these articles, like we were the article, bitch. Like we were the source. Like we really, interviewed this amazing person that was like so willing to be vulnerable with us and connect. And it was just awesome. And it's great to just hear firsthand. And I think like all of the stories, like the Reddit stories, I'm super wet about, like the misconceptions and people fighting against that. Definitely the brat tamer dom stuff too.
Yes.
The humiliation piece. Like I love the differentiations between emotional and physical pain and like breaking that down. Like all the boundaries, like how beautiful the BDSM space is and how they're able to cultivate these unique, beautiful relationships that are super hot. So it's a whole lot of wet. This is a big wet motherfucking episode, guys.
Yes. For dry, I'm dry, I guess, about the men with the thinly veiled like hatred for women or whatever, as David put it. Like he put it really well. Dry about that because it does get confusing and it's hard to know like when you're meeting someone for the first time and you're like, oh, I like BDSM, they do too, but like where it's going, and especially like the whole porn stuff with like anything where it's like an opportunity for men to like degrade or humiliate women in a way that's not like behind the best intentions, because it's like we can be very wet about that stuff and it can make us come like hard as fuck, but it's also like when it's taken outside of like this safe space, it's a little scary.
Yeah.
So that makes my pussy a little dry.
Yeah, mine's kind of the same thing. Like it sucks, like because even David said in like some other articles, like the person in Montreal BDSM, like there's a lot of not sensitive male doms, and a lot of men that actually do hate women like might fall into this because they want to control women, and it's really scary, and it sucks that a lot of people are turned off to the community because of that. We
Yeah.
all know the safe spaces exist, but there's predators everywhere, and they try to weasel their way in every
Yes.
space. So that part is definitely super dry. And yeah, just like the gender dynamics piece, and we didn't touch on it a lot, but it's like, why are there so many more male doms than female doms, like statistically speaking, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, for confused, I guess I'm still a little bit confused on like where I stand as far as like being dom versus being sub. Like I do think I like trend towards more sub with like the brattiness. But like I don't know, like I do want to explore like being dom more, and like especially if there's like financial reward with it. Like I'm confused about like where I can like explore that, like get training. Like I know like I definitely want to do more research after this episode because it was really like eye-opening for me. But also I'm confused about, I guess, like the ways trauma plays in. Like I think we addressed it really well with some of the stories that people shared, like David, and then also that Reddit story. But it is like, it's so tricky. Anything trauma related is so iffy, and I feel like you need such an amount of like care and attention to detail and like scaling things and aftercare and all of that, that like it confuses me, and it makes me like a little like apprehensive to do some of this stuff because like it's serious, you know? So.
Yeah, totally. I would say, yeah, I'm confused, and like, again, the part that scares me the most, like, is really that aftercare piece, because I think like the come down from it, like the come down from any high, like a thrilling adrenaline rush type of situation, fantasy that you love so much, like there is going to be a come down. There's a come down after like really good things, like literally like post concert depression, like but obviously this is way more intense, but it's in that same vein, and so that part scares me a little. And I think I'm also just confused. I want to learn more about the exact training, and obviously this was basically about doms and dominance and all of that, but identifying more with the sub, it's like, I am curious to really, like, I want someone to spell it out for me. Like, what does that training really look like? Because if it's something I'm ever interested in, definitely interested in the sex parties though, bitch. We gotta make that happen.
Gotta go.
But yeah, let us know what you guys thought about this episode. If you want to see us interview more experts in, certain fields, like definitely let us know. It's something that we've always wanted to incorporate on this podcast and definitely will in the future. So let us know what you thought. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, like the video, and give us a comment, with anything. You guys can always email us at sowetsodry@gmail.com. The O's are zeros for questions, a story you want shared, any topic suggestions, and same thing goes for Instagram and our DMs at sowetsodry. The O's are zeros. Follow us there. TikTok. It would mean so much to us. We did reach 600 subscribers a few days ago. This is coming out, kind of in this, we're pre-recording right now. So hopefully maybe we're at 700. Who knows?
Yes. And if you guys want to support this podcast, we do have listener support at the bottom of the description of every single episode. It is on Spotify, but even if you're not listening on Spotify, you can still support us. It's 99 cents, $4.99, or $9.99 a month. Also, if you guys want to rate us on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Spotify, any of that, we would greatly appreciate it. We love you so much, and we will catch you in the next episode.
Bye!
We found that there's really this underlying fear of, rejection. And so when men are on these platforms, generally speaking, not everybody, there's this sense of, I have to make the first move. I have to go hunting. I have to make sure that I go after her. And that puts a lot of pressure on the man. It also, opens up a stream of bad behavior, because if the woman doesn't respond, it's taken as rejection. Therefore, you get this, harassment taking place. So when the woman is the one making the first move, he's complimented. He feels flattered on the other end versus in this, this state of How do I get her to respond?
Right. I'll say this. I'm 30 years old. I have used probably 6 or 7 dating apps in my life, purely for research purposes, of course.
Of course.
I have used Bumble. And one thing that I found actually was that it was an unbelievable relief to have the burden shift to the woman to make the first move. For the following reason, I'm more than happy to make the first move typically, but dating online, dating anywhere really, is something of a numbers game. So you have to send all of these incredibly clever first messages with perfect grammar over and over every single week, and it's lovely to be able to sit back and say, once the match is made, and there's enough interest there,
there's
she's
interest.
just going to reach out to me. I don't have to worry about it.
Well, what's really great about that as well? You feel relieved, and the women feel empowered and confident, and they also get to drive the conversations.